Steve here from the Vinyl Record Mission, and I'm very excited to share this amazing new record label that I recently discovered, and I want you to know about it too. And I just so happened to get an interview with the producer and the recording engineer and the owner, an amazing gentleman. I hope you join me.
Your two favorite guys, Ryan and Steve from the Vinyl Record Mission.
Hello, here's Steve from the Vinyl Record Mission, and today I'm here with a very special guest, Bob Attiyeh from Yarlung Records.
Steve, welcome. It's
Right?
good to have you here.
Thank you for allowing me to join you. It's an honor and a privilege to be interviewing this young man. He's done great things for the vinyl community that I would like to bring awareness to, and I believe that not a lot of people know about his phenomenal recordings. And I'm going to have Bob share a little bit with you guys about how he got into the business and what his involvement is in the company. And why don't we start with how old is the company? How long have you been around?
Next year's our 20th anniversary, which is hard to believe. It feels like about 3.5 years of hard work, but it's actually our 20th anniversary from when we actually began. Our first Grammy Award was won by Antonio Lisi, and we recorded that album at the Broad Stage in Santa Monica. The label itself doesn't have a particular home because we record in concert halls. So we've recorded in Ambassador Hall in Pasadena, the Broad Stage, Zipper Hall, Walt Disney Concert Hall. In many of these cases, they were the first recordings made in the new concert halls, which was very exciting. Camilleri Hall at USC, Segerstrom Center for the Arts, we did the first recording in Samuel Lee Theater. Zipper was the first recording, I believe. That was, 19, 20 years ago. Ambassador had obviously a storied track record of fabulous recordings for many, many decades, but it was a treat to work there as well.
The first record that I was introduced to that informed me of your wonderful label was the Antonio Lisi record, the Latin Grammy Award-winning record. And let me tell you, that record was enough to make me look up your website and just dive into the discography of the artists that you have recorded, some of which myself have never heard of, and I'm sure most of my subscribers and viewers have not heard of either. But these are top tier. The caliber of these musicians is just unsurpassed. They are not as well known as I think most of us would like them to be. But somehow you have found them, or they have found you, and you've done these amazing recordings with these artists. How did you attract these artists to you?
We do have a mission. Yarlung is a nonprofit, and we do have a mission of supporting young concert musicians at the beginning of their international concert careers. That doesn't mean they have to be touring around the world, but it means that for us to do a recording to be supportive of them at the right level, they need to be performing in serious international quality concert halls. They need to be at the Philharmonic or in Los Angeles, or at UCLA's CAP UCLA program, or major concert halls, because that's where their audience will be looking forward to meeting the artists after a concert to get the CD signed or LP. So the mission began to support young musicians at this critical juncture in their career when an album, such as a CD, will help them bridge the gap between an unknown artist and this audience. So it's a wonderful business card. It's a handshaking opportunity. If they were politicians, this would be where they kiss the baby. They get to meet the audience members and share a joke or something in the way they sign the CD. And it helps the audience connect with the musician in a way because they won't forget. They'll take the recording home with them and then hopefully reach out to the concert hall and say, hey, when can we hear Yuko again? Or when can David play again? Or I really enjoyed that concert with that Finnish violinist. I can't pronounce his name, Petri something. Mm-hmm. And when can you invite him back? And then that's where we help the musician develop a career. It's that repeat concert audience that we're hoping to encourage.
And the amazing thing, Bob, is that none of these artists seem like they're in the infancy of their careers. They seem like seasoned, just virtuosos. They're absolutely amazing. I've discovered Yuko Mabuchi and Antonio Lizzi, right? And also this new gentleman, the record that you gave me today is that we listened to earlier.
The pianist Nathan Ben Yehuda,
Oh, my goodness.
and Astral Mixtape, pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I highly recommend that record. And these are audiophile pressings, folks. Bob, you can explain to them how your recording process in these the halls that you said they're concert halls, correct?
Except for the 3 recordings we've made here in Taos, at the Imhoff studio,
Right.
everything we've done is in concert halls.
Right.
Large concert halls, 1,800, 2,000 feet. The Soraya, for example, in the San Fernando Valley seats 2,200 people maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Walt Disney Concert Hall is about 1,800. Royce Hall is about 2,000. Zipper Hall, 400. Samuele Theater, 300. Camilleri Hall, where we do our jazz, 98 people.
Wow.
So
Jazz.
that's an intimate jazz setting.
Right,
That's
that's
much
perfect.
more like a jazz club sound.
Perfect for that.
Interestingly enough, Camilleri Hall was designed by the same acoustician, Yasuhisa Toyota, who built Walt Disney Concert Hall with Frank Gehry.
Wow.
Same firm.
Wow. And you're recording, the way you actually record the musicians, did you say that you use one microphone in location and it's all done in a live take?
Yes, when we were talking about that, Steve, we were listening to the new test pressing actually, of the Smoke and Mirrors Ensemble. And that is a single microphone. It's the AKG C24. That was loaned to us by a good friend at Gearworks Pro Audio, no longer around. And that was a single microphone. So in that instance, we spent a lot of time setting up the hall, adjusting the positions of the musicians such that they were all correctly balanced, EQ'd in a way, for that single stereo microphone to pick them up. And that was, every single take is a full take. It's a complete take, no editing. So we had plenty of time actually to do multiple takes of any movement that they wanted. However, the object was to, by the end of the recording session, be very happy with at least one of the takes, in many cases, many of them, such that we could present them unedited. I have a couple of selfish reasons for wanting to do that. Not only are the performances the best when the musicians are prepared to play completely through in one take, but also we are recording in analog tape, we're recording in DSD, we're recording in high-res PCM, and we're recording in surround sound. And I don't particularly like editing, but it is such that I don't want to spend my life doing it either. And in that many formats, it's a lot of time.
Bob, what did you do prior to starting Yarlung Records?
My first job before I graduated was in the archaeology department at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. I worked with Charles Rosaire, cataloging seagrass textiles from San Nicolas Island. Very musical endeavor. And I got known as the forger because I would piece together Mixtec pottery very carefully and do it as well as I could so that it looked, you could still see the cracks, but it looked like they were still whole. So they called me the forger. But after college, my first job was in marketing and public relations for the new Los Angeles Music Center Opera in those days. That was 1987. It was the second season of the opera company. And I worked under the marketing director, John Howlett, who had come from BAM in New York. And I learned a great deal. Without working for him, I probably never would have been able to create Yarlung Records. Another wonderful thing is, after a couple of years, I moved into the development department at the opera with Connie Morgan. and learned a great deal there about fundraising. And since Yarlung is a nonprofit, obviously fundraising is very important. We have a rabid 17 fans around the world, Steve, who buy every one of our albums. But you can tell that with 17 sales, fundraising is still part of the deal.
Yeah, right.
Actually,
We're going to try to increase those numbers
Thank
here
you.
today for you, Bob.
Actually, we have excellent distribution. We have distributors in most of the major markets around the world, in Asia, Europe, North America, for which we're grateful. Fantastic collaborators. So then, after leaving the opera, I was working with the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra as a board member and wound up chairing a couple of committees that were also very important. The Strategic Planning Committee, Governance. At one point I served as vice president. Fortunately, I never had to serve as president. And also learned there how nonprofits run structurally, so that when we created Yarlung Artists, which is the nonprofit wing of Yarlung, I knew how to do it thanks to that work, hands-on experience. In fact, many of the people from LACO, from the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, are to this day involved in what we do at Yarlung.
That's great.
Margaret Bacher, who's our concertmaster, is one of our special advisors, for example.
It's good company.
Yes.
When did you decide that you wanted to start your own record label?
I came to the recording business backwards. I did not train as a recording engineer. I loved listening to music, and I had friends who had been producers and engineers who were listening buddies. And I remember asking a fatal decision early in my relationship with my first mentor in recording, Gustavo Hidalgo from Uruguay. I said to him, Gustavo, I know that CDs are so much better than the records, but I have some records that I also bought subsequently on CD. Why do I like the record better? And he looked at me and said, Bob, it's all over.
We're going to get a lot of comments about that one there too. CDs versus vinyl. You watch.
Hey, CDs are great.
They are.
Vinyl is great.
Yeah.
They serve different uses.
Absolutely.
And I am grateful for all the media that we release on. We release high-resolution DSD downloads, 256, high-resolution PCM, CDs, vinyl, and analog tape. But I have to tell you, people ask me, Bob, you're so into this high-res stuff. How do you feel about it, one of your recordings when it gets released on an MP3? I said, well, the better job that we can do in the first stage of the recording, be it tape or high-res digital, the better it's going to sound as an MP3.
Absolutely. Steve Hoffman. How did he inspire you?
Gustavo and I, before we made our first recording, which was with an Australian pianist, were listening to a bunch of different records. And I had just bought an album by Peggy Lee that it turns out Steve Hoffman had mastered. It was 180 gram from...
Black Coffee, was it? He remastered Black Coffee?
He did.
Yeah, he did.
And Black Coffee is one of the tracks on this album. And you're thinking of the whole CD package.
Okay.
This is a different one on which his Black Coffee, his version of Black Coffee also was there. And it was, frankly, perfect.
Wow.
So I reached out to Steve and I said, Steve, we're starting to make these recordings. I'd really love your help. He said, well, what can I do for you? And I said, well, we just listened to Black Coffee. I said, it was just flawless. It was balanced the way I like. It was rich. It was transparent. It told a great story. What did you do? And Steve said, well, he started to laugh. And then he said, Bob, you're my kind of guy. I did nothing on that track. That is straight off the tape.
Wow.
Okay, so what this tells me is a couple of things. Number one, Steve was not mastering just to master. He was only mastering when he could bring improvement to the final product. I like that. So Steve and Kevin Gray, your friend, and I made our first CD, which was a digital recording of this Australian pianist. And Steve was there, and Kevin was there, and Gustavo was there, actually. And it became quite clear that Steve didn't want to do too much. They basically raised the volume. And I realized quite quickly that because I liked black coffee so much and because I was trying to learn everything I could from Steve, that our goal was going to become do no mastering. Record the album such that you don't have to change anything after the fact. And so when we say on our albums, mastered by Steve Hoffman, what that means is Steve and I have talked about it. Steve has taught me more than I'll ever know. And I set up the recording such that it's mastered on stage. That means we're moving musicians around, we're doing the mix, we're doing the mastering with how much reverb we want in the hall, we are doing the mastering with EQ based on microphone height. Everything changes, the EQ changes depending on where you are with the microphone relative to the musicians and relative to the acoustics in the hall. That's where the mastering happens this way. So that if we're fortunate, and we work hard enough so that we get fortunate, every album is simply recorded and then released. There is no mastering stage. Vinyl mastering is a different story. Vinyl mastering means cutting a lacquer from the tape. That obviously is still the word mastering, but when I'm working with Bernie Grundman, we bypass the board. We don't use any EQ. We go straight from the tape to the preamp that feeds the lathe. So again, no mastering.
So can I just say that the sound quality of these records and these productions without all the mixing boards and all that other mastering is unbelievably beautiful. I've never heard anything so balanced, like you said, is the word that you got when you listen to Black Coffee from Steve Hoffman. That's, your ears are craving nothing else. They're getting exactly what they need. And that to me is amazing, how you've devised this way of recording. And not to mention you're working with one of the greatest, lacquer cutters in the world, in the business, Bernie Grundman. And that should say something in and of itself to the quality of these recordings. Bernie doesn't just work with anybody, and he is creating an amazing product for Yarlung. And I think that all of you who are into audiophile records and 45 RPM vinyl, and you've been very enticed by Analog Productions. Chad Chasm is great. You've got the Tone Poet series and Joe Harley and Kevin Gray. By the way, Kevin Gray's not my personal friend.
He would be. He's a great guy.
If you knew how many of my his records I bought, and I gave his Kirsten Edkins first album on Coherent an amazing review. Almost got me blackballed from the vinyl community, believe it or not, because I stuck up for the artist and Kevin in a way that about 3 people didn't understand. Anyways, that's a long story.
Good for you.
Yeah. Kevin probably doesn't even know that story, but
Kevin's a master.
Yeah, definitely a high quality product with more diversity than any audiophile could ever want to have in their collection, to really showcase the beauty of their systems.
You like that Smoke and Mirrors test pressing, huh?
God, I can't wait for it to come out. I am so excited for these. I got to hear some stuff that's not even been released yet, and I'm telling you, get in line. You're gonna want to. I will have some images of these, right?
Yeah.
That I can post so that you guys can see when they do come out. Keep an eye on the website. Go to the website. It's yarlungrecords.com, right?
Yeah.
Yarlung Records. I'll leave links for the website in the description section, and keep an eye on the new releases and get them while they last, because you don't do large volume pressings. Do you repress any of the records? Do second, third runs, or?
This is a very important question. Yes. The challenge with, first of all, our normal vinyl runs are 1,000 copies. They're not 10,000 copies. The stampers don't last that long. They last about 500, 600 records. So we have used 2 stampers by the time we have done a complete run of 1,000 copies. The key, when people say they like first pressings, let me tell you what that means. That means that the recording engineer, me in this case, has heard and approved the test pressing from that stamper. So what I've learned is that when we repress albums, I mean the Antonio album is in 5,000-6,000 copies.
Oh wow, yeah.
These are small numbers, but there's still multiple stampers. So we retest press. In other words, I want to hear those test pressings from the second pressing, which is technically a second pressing, but from a collecting standpoint or from a listening standpoint, it's a first pressing because I've approved it. I've listened to it. Where you get into trouble is where you're listening to an album that has 50 pressings and they keep making stampers and the mother gets tired and the stampers degenerate and no one's checking them to the same degree. I have to check all of our own stampers. I learned that the hard way, and now make sure that when we do repress, it's essentially the same kid gloves as a first pressing gets.
That makes
I have
sense.
a fun story for you about the Smoke and Mirrors album you liked.
Yeah.
So this year was my first time at the Munich High-End show, and I was presenting in a series of rooms. Wonderful, all of them. It was a great experience. If you haven't been to the Munich High-End show, I recommend you go. 2025 is the last year it's going to be in Munich. Then they're moving to Vienna, so no hardship there. But I was presenting for Kronos, and Kronos is a Canadian turntable company sharing a room with Goebbels audio speakers. Oliver is a German speaker manufacturer, exquisite quality, and they're both very particular. I won't say fussy, but let's just say perfectionistic in the way they want their vinyl, and the way they want their presentations. I took a risk, and I played the test pressing, which I hadn't heard yet, from the Smoke and Mirrors album in that room as part of one of my, I think I gave them 3 demonstrations this year in Munich. And I was just flabbergasted at how wonderful it was. And so is Louis. So Louis, bless him, is the executive producer of the album, which means he underwrote it. Wow. Thank you, Louis. And the Kronos logo, which you will see on the cover, is very meaningful to me because this is from one of the very, very top, if not the top, turntable manufacturers in the world.
Wow.
Who does not suffer fools gladly. He's very happy to tell me when he doesn't like something I've done. So thank you, Louis, for your support. But that's the first time I heard it.
That's beautiful. That's a
And I think you're the third person.
feather in your cap. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
The third person. Wow.
Third playing is what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored. Really.
It's a great album.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can't say enough about the music that I heard today and the music that I've already heard from.
You liked the Diego Schisi track.
Yeah.
I think I confessed to you that when we commissioned that piece from Diego, I had the Munich show in mind because I wanted a really fun audiophile track with every bell and whistle.
Yeah.
And he gave it to us.
Yeah, he did.
I met Diego in Buenos Aires.
Oh, really?
After Antonio won the first Latin Grammy, the Argentine Ministry of Culture invited us down to Buenos Aires to their first MICA conference, which was this group of music composers, producers, recording artists. It was basically a conference to give presentations and meet people. And Pablo Mota, who's the bass player on Antonio's album, lives in Buenos Aires, and he said, "Bob, you've got to go meet my friend Diego." So we went to 3 of Diego's live concerts, and I later realized, okay, let's commission some work from him. So he wrote this piece for Smoke and Mirrors Percussion Ensemble, Game of Clocks. which is a spoof on all of us audiophiles. He also wrote a piece that is not a spoof called Nene for Sibelius Piano Trio, also on vinyl, by the way.
And only an audiophile would know that that was, maybe not. I mean, you know that it was a spoof on how intently
he's
we
teasing
listen.
us. He's teasing us.
But I mean, any other person that sits down and listens, that would just be mesmerized by the sound. And,
Well, it also happens to be great music.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but the second piece he wrote for us, Nene, he wrote for the Sibelius Piano Trio, and that won another Latin Grammy nomination. So he actually came to Las Vegas. He was on his way to Japan for some concerts with his tango ensemble, but he came to Las Vegas with us for the Grammy Awards, which were really fun. We didn't win that one, but it's okay. Our friend did.
You're going to find out the results of, you've been nominated for one recently, and in 3 days you're going to be finding out if you've got another one under your belt.
Yes, Julien Labro, a French bandoneon player based now in New York, wrote this extraordinary piece called Meditation Number 1, which we recorded with Takach Quartet and him on bandoneon last year. And it is a wonderful album. It has all kinds of different things on it, including some Brazilian jazz, some very avant-garde, cutting-edge classical music. It has Bryce Dessner's piece that he wrote for the quintet. Bryce is an American rock guitarist living in Paris who happens now to be the darling of the orchestral world because he's been writing some fantastic, serious classical music. But he wrote Circles for this. Meditation Number 1 is the piece that Julien wrote, and it won a nomination for a Latin Grammy. He called me. He said, "What? I'm not from South America. What? French aren't Latin? Come on, Julien." Also, he happens to be channeling Piazzolla with Piazzolla's fabulous bandoneon, which was, of course, the instrument that made him so famous with his tangos.
Right.
He's Latin enough for me. But I have to warn you, Julien's competition is very stiff. His piece, our quintet, is the only piece that is not full orchestra that won a nomination.
Oh, wow.
And among the group include Gustavo Dudamel himself and the LA Philharmonic.
Oh.
So we are, let's just say, in great company, and I'm so proud of Julien for the nomination. We don't need to win for me to be incredibly proud of him.
Oh, that's great.
I happen to really like new music. When I'm listening to music just for pleasure, I gravitate toward Baroque music and to jazz. That doesn't mean I don't listen to classical symphonies sometimes or the great solo piano repertoire. But I do tend to find new compositions intriguing, and I feel that part of our mission is to support composers.
Right.
So commissioning music is absolutely central to our mission. On the recording that we just made with the Finnish violinist Pekka Kuusisto and the Viennese pianist Jonas Aunen, Vienna-based, he's also Finnish, we did 6 commissions for him, thanks to our underwriter, Russell Ward, including the piece that we played for you that Yuko wrote for them, called Evolution of the One. So supporting, in fact, that was Yuko's first classical commission. Not her last, but her first. So I want to hear new music, and I want to support composers who are living today. I want to support the future Beethovens. And so when we're creating a debut album for a young musician, part of our job is to showcase that musician in every light that someone could hire them to perform in. So, for example, when I audition musicians, I ask them to play something Baroque, I ask them to play something romantic, and I ask them to play something contemporary. And I don't mean contemporary 1950s, I mean something written in the last 20 or 30 years. Because that gives me a feeling for the musician's scope and what their strengths are. And so if we can, if they are strong across the board, we will choose repertoire that is also across the board. And because we don't edit, and because people know this and know that the musicians play this well, in reality, they could get hired based upon these recordings. This has happened many times.
Mm-hmm.
So we will try to have an appropriately paired Baroque piece with a romantic piece, with a contemporary piece on our albums. It isn't sort of the greatest of Mahler, for example, but Mahler might be there. Mm. So we did a recording, for example, of Mahler's Fifth Symphony, but we also recorded the Takemitsu Percussion Concerto with Smoke and Mirrors and Jerry Schwartz conducting the Colburn Orchestra. That's pretty phenomenal. That has not been released on vinyl yet,
Mm-hmm.
but you can listen to it on tape, and you can listen to it on all the digital formats.
Okay.
That was an extraordinary performance. That was the first half of the concert. So yes, I happen to love Mahler, but it's not all we do.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's wonderful that you've chosen to nurture and cultivate a path for these outstanding musicians, and not just for us today, but like you said, you're creating the future Bachs and the future Beethovens, and
You just mentioned my favorite composer of all time is Bach.
Bach.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. Let's see. All of my favorite records, I think, are like violin concertos, like
Yeah.
Joseph Szigeti doing Bach, Nathan Milstein doing Bach,
If you
Janos
like-
Stalker,
If,
Bach,
if
right?
if you like Nathan's partitas, please listen to Petr Ivanov.
Oh, I will, definitely.
That's on vinyl.
Oh, really?
It is spectacular.
Oh, man.
Yes, he plays the partita in B minor rather well.
Yeah, I can already see my record fund diminishing.
Well, we'll
as
see
we
if we can
speak.
help with that.
Thank you. This music is being created not just for us to enjoy today, but for our future generations, for our children, our children's children, and into the future. I think this music is going to really, really be timeless 30, 40, 50 years from now. I think your records are going to be just so coveted, and I hope that you continue doing what you're doing. It's really a gift. You're definitely a gift to the vinyl community, not just the vinyl community, but the music industry as a whole. Neil told me about Bob and introduced me to his record, and he originally played for me on his speakers.
Oh, the Miles Davis?
Yes, the Yuko Mabuchi record, and I was like, not only who's this artist, but what label's this on? Who pressed this? How come I don't see this?
Well, some of our classical musicians, they really rock.
Yeah, they do, and as I witnessed today.
It's interesting you mention 50 years or 100 years from now. Granted, we have no idea what digital media will survive. But I know full well that our records will be there. If they're well taken care of, how long should vinyl last? 100 years? 200 years? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have an expiration date.
Right.
And it doesn't require special software to play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right. We are making recordings for the future generations.
Yeah. I do believe that vinyl, if it is taken care of, will last forever. And I'll tell you a funny story. While up here in Taos, I stopped at Jay's Unique thrift shop. And I walked in and I was doing a little video there, and I looked up on the ceiling, and Bob, they've got records drywall screwed to the acoustic ceiling, just like records that have been displaced from their covers, 78s. I'm looking up and I see a trumpet label, the label that Elmore James' Dust My Broom is on, 1953, but it's Lucky Joe Almond and a song called Rock Me. It's like early rockabilly on trumpet. And I'm like, what is that doing up there? So that's definitely not the way we want to take care of our records. But
Not
that
with drywall screws?
no,
Okay.
not with drywall screws.
I'll
To
keep
an
that in
acoustic
mind.
ceiling.
I'll
To an
keep that in
acoustic
mind.
ceiling. But it's still, I rescued it. It still plays,
Oh, good.
and it's in my collection now. So they do last forever, even when they're a little abused. But we want to take care of them,
A number of people in our community like 78s the most. My audiophile friends sort of roll their eyes at that.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that they like the 78 so much.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same reason why we record in one take. In the 78 era, there were no edits in those early discs.
That's right.
If it didn't work, you threw it out and started again. So what that meant was that the musicians came to the studios honed. They were rehearsed, they knew what they were doing, and they got it right. And they got it right within the 3-minute span that they usually had.
Right.
And if it was a little longer piece, well, they'd just slow the lathe a little bit and cheat.
Yeah.
But that aside, the performances are raw and real and as they played. And I think that's why. Also, there's a wonderful mid-range to a greatly reproduced 78 that nothing else quite matches. But it's that performance that the 78s have that I think is so galvanizing, which is the reason, other than the fact I don't like editing, why we don't edit.
Right.
Because I want that same quality of preparation, that same commitment to the artistic arc in the musical expression of whatever that piece is, to be complete and genuine from the musician's standpoint. If I were to edit something together, that's then my artistry interfering with the original vision of the musician.
Right.
And I'd much prefer to be invisible behind the microphone and let the musician shine with the musician's musical intent, executed as perfectly as they can in one take.
Folks, I think we have shined a light on a new record label that is very, very exciting. I hope that all of you visit the website, find something that you... And the good thing about the website is there's YouTube videos for almost all the albums, right?
Yes,
quite a few.
We have YouTube and SoundCloud snippets available.
Yeah, so you can go search for different artists on the website and click on the YouTube link, and it will let you hear what the artists sound like. If you like jazz, there's the Sophisticated Lady Jazz Quartet. Amazing. They've got albums out. There's, of course, Yuko Mabuchi does the Miles Davis album, correct?
Yes, I think we have 5 albums with Sophisticated Lady and 4 with Yuko Mabuchi.
Yeah, those are, if you're into jazz, those are all great choices. And then there's, of course, all the amazing classical composers. And would you call some of it world music or?
Yes,
Yeah.
in fact, the recordings that we made here in Taos, in the Imhoff studio, include, frankly, some, Sufi music. We did a zikr with a phenomenal sheikh singing right here in the studio with a frame drum. Pretty spectacular. That's called Sacred Trance Music from Taos Mountain. He also does the Hanuman Chalisa on that recording. And then a couple of years later we did 2 albums with sitar and cello here in Taos. Paul Livingstone, who was a disciple of Ravi Shankar's on sitar, and Pete Jacobson on cello. They did a remarkable job. One album is classical rags, and the second album is a series of improvisations that we called Meditations on Taos Mountain. That in fact refer to a number of the characters in Taos, some of them rather well known, who inspired these improvisations. So we've had great fun here.
I need to get a copy of that to listen to in my garage while it's open at 5 a.m. in the morning while I watch the sunrise over the San Cristobal Mountains.
I'll find you a copy.
I have a perfectly good view, and I would love to hear that while I'm watching the sun come up.
I'll get it for you one more time.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Well, folks, thank you very much for sitting with myself and Bob here. We appreciate your support. Anything you can do, go to the website, become a member. You can become a member on there too. Am I mistaken? You can pledge.
Oh, you mean make a contribution?
Yes.
They're always welcome. Yes,
Yeah.
there is a Yarlung Artist Contribution site, but frankly, I hope you enjoy the music. If you have a question, go to the contact page and send me a note. I'll respond. And thank you for supporting Steve's channel. He's doing fantastic work. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you very much. It's been
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.
If you haven't, make sure you hit like and subscribe to the Vinyl Record Mission so that way you don't miss out on any future content. More videos coming your way.